Hi, my name is Michael Duncan, and I'm a senior technical instructor with Okta Education Services. In addition to other technical courses in our workforce identity curriculum, I also teach our 3-day Okta Essentials class. If you are completely new to Okta, or you have just been assigned the role of Okta administrator and you're looking to begin your journey along the path to building expertise in deploying Okta within your organization, then this is the course for you. So, come with me and let me show you the topics that we cover in the class. I'll talk about the flow of the class, and I'll also be showing you a demonstration of how to integrate an application as well as how to implement user lifecycle management. This will give you a good feel for what you can anticipate in the class, so let's go ahead and get started. So we'd like to show you what the Okta Essentials course offers. First of all, here's our table of contents, and as you can see, we have quite a bit on tap for you. We're just going to focus on one of the essential areas that's covered in the course, authenticating with SSO and also managing user lifecycle management. In the Okta Identity Cloud, we have a number of different solutions available to you. In the Okta Essentials class, you'll get an opportunity to see single sign-on using a variety of different methods of authentication, universal directory, adaptive multi-factor authentication, as well as how to implement user lifecycle management. Don't forget that Okta has solutions not only for securing your cloud-based applications, but also on-premise applications as well. As we look at authenticating using single sign-on, consider the following questions. Does your company have an enterprise fragmentation problem? In other words, employees that have to log into and switch between multiple applications as well as different websites in order to complete the tasks that are associated with their role within the organization. And then, do you have a need to leverage Active Directory user credentials in order to access third-party applications? You're going to see how that Okta's SSO solution helps you in order to address those issues. As far as Cloud SSO and provisioning is concerned, you'll want to begin with the Okta Integration Network, or the OIN as we call it. Currently, there are over 7,000 integrations there, and we refer to it as the Okta Integration Network as opposed to the Okta Application Network because we don't just have applications there. We also have the ability to secure infrastructure components such as AWS, as well as APIs in the Okta Integration Network as well. If you want to see exactly what accessing the Okta Integration Network looks like from an administrator perspective, then here it is. You would basically perform a Google-like free text search in order to find the specific application that you're looking to integrate with Okta, whether it's for provisioning or whether you're connecting the application in order to facilitate single sign-on. Single sign-on was the very first solution that was offered to our customers by Okta. And what that means is once an end user has logged into the Okta Identity Cloud, then they will see a dashboard displaying application icons for all of the applications that have been integrated with Okta that they use in order to do their job. In other words, having authenticated into Okta, now simply clicking on that application icon will allow them to use Okta as their identity provider in order to access the service provider application. In addition, there are a variety of different methods of authentication available, including SAML, WSFed, and OIDC. SWA, or Secure Web Authentication, is Okta's very own solution for SSO into applications that do not support a federated single sign-on protocol. As far as accessing an application through Okta is concerned, first comes your primary authentication. In other words, the process of proving your identity by logging into the Okta Identity Cloud itself. But once you have logged into Okta, then federated authentication can take place for those applications that have been set up with a federated SSO protocol, such as SAML, OIDC, or WSFed. In that scenario, you will have already built a trusted relationship between Okta and the service provider application. The way that we create this trusted relationship is through the use of digital certificates. Then, once that relationship has been established, when a user logs into Okta, then essentially the application is going to be trusting the authentication that has taken place in Okta through the use of the digital certificate in order to allow or determine whether or not to permit the user to gain access to its services. Now, there are a wide variety of different applications that we can connect to using Okta for SSO, and each application is going to have different features and different parameters and also different capabilities. For example, not every application is going to support provisioning or user lifecycle management. As far as using SAML is concerned, this is an industry standard technology. Of course, SAML stands for Security Assertion Markup Language, and it is based on XML, the extensible markup language. One of the benefits of using SAML is the simple fact that it is going to eliminate the need for passwords. You will have digital signatures instead for authentication and integrity, and it allows you to centralize the authentication function and provide greater visibility. There are essentially three roles that are going to be involved in the use of SAML. First, you have the end user that will authenticate into the identity provider, in this case, that being Okta. And then, after having logged on to Okta, the end user will see the application icons, which we saw earlier, and by clicking on an application icon, they will then be sending a SAML assertion via the browser over to the service provider application. At that point, the service provider application can make a control access decision as to whether or not it is going to allow the end user to have access to its services. Essentially, that assertion is going to tell the service provider that the user has already been authenticated inside of an identity provider at a certain time using a specific method. Now, when configuring the service provider application for SSO, there are a couple of different options that you could take advantage of. You'll notice in the screenshot on the lower left a button that says View Setup Instructions. When you click there, you will get a list of instructions as to how to go about setting up the service provider application for SAML 2.0. On the contrary, the other option is to simply download the identity provider metadata. Notice the hyperlink that appears below the push button. And by downloading the identity provider metadata, that is the Okta metadata, you can then quickly upload that into the service provider, and that will, by the way, include the digital certificate necessary for authentication purposes in the service provider. So, I'm going to do a demonstration, and I'm going to specifically be using Salesforce as the service provider application. Our goal is to set up Salesforce for SAML authentication for SSO from Okta. And in my diagram here, you can see there's certain information that will need to be passed from Okta to Salesforce. Specifically, we need that identity provider certificate, an issuer ID, and then in addition to that, on the Salesforce side, we are going to be creating a login URL, which will be used as what is called in the industry the ACS, the Assertion Consumer Service URL. That is what we will bring back over to Okta, and by placing that in Okta, we will be able to launch Salesforce from Okta using SAML. So, let's get into our demonstration. With that, let's go ahead and do a little demonstration in order to understand exactly how we set up and use user lifecycle management. So let's go ahead and take a look at how we would set up SSO for an application such as Salesforce. And I'll begin by logging in as an administrator. And after logging in to the administrator console, I will just go to Applications, Applications, and Add Application. I will search for the application of interest just by typing Salesforce and selecting. After choosing the application, I'm taken to the general settings where I'm going to change the instance type from production to sandbox, since I'm actually working with a test instance as opposed to a production instance of Salesforce. As I scroll down, I will simply click Next, and that takes me to the SignOn options, where I can select the authentication method that we would like to use. Notice it defaults to secure web authentication, but if SAML 2.0 is available, we definitely want to choose that. Having selected SAML, down below you can see where we can open up the setup instructions that would walk us through configuring SAML for Salesforce. However, right underneath we happen to have a hyperlink that will allow us to download the identity provider metadata, that is the Okta metadata, which can then be consumed by our service provider in order to create the login URL. This is the address to which the SAML assertion will ultimately be delivered. Now, below there, we're going to change our username format to custom because we need our usernames to be unique, and we're going to use our Okta expression language in order to create our username format. We'll take a portion of the email address, and then we'll add to that the Okta instance. And that'll make our usernames unique. Now, with that, at this point, I can scroll down and click Done. And after I click Done, it takes me over to the Assignments tab, but I'm not going to assign anyone to the application because we have not yet set up provisioning. That is what will push users from Okta into the application so that we can SSO into the application with those user accounts. I'll go back to the SignOn tab. And in the SignOn tab, as I scroll down, I will simply right mouse click and download the Okta metadata. Now, at this point, in order to create that login URL we were talking about, we just go over to Salesforce and we log in. After we log into our Salesforce sandbox, then we'll just navigate to the single sign-on settings. In order to do that, I'll simply choose Setup, and then over on the left, I will just type Sing in order to quickly get to the single sign-on settings. And from here, I will begin by enabling SAML, and then save. And at this point, we can simply upload the metadata that we got from Okta. And then save. Now, down at the bottom is the login URL that we will simply copy and then take back to Okta. And as we go back over to Okta, we will have to click Edit and then scroll down and paste in the login URL. And having done that, we can save. Now, at this point, we have set up SSO for Salesforce. However, we would only be able to log into Salesforce with accounts that already exist inside of Salesforce. So, at this point, we will go ahead and we will take a look at user lifecycle management. Now that we've seen how to set up single sign-on using SAML, let's take a look at setting up user lifecycle management. User lifecycle management is a separate solution in Okta, and here we're representing three major categories in HR terms: joiners, movers, and then leavers. When we talk about joiners, essentially we're talking about, for example, individuals that are being hired into the organization. When someone joins your company or your organization, then right away there are certain applications that you want to give them access to so they can immediately become productive and do their job. Applications that everyone gets access to, we might call birthright applications. But then for other applications, service requests might normally need to be created. However, with Okta, simply by assigning that user to the appropriate groups, we can give them access to the applications they need to do their job. As far as movers are concerned, this could be job changes or a promotion or an individual that's changing their name because of marriage, or it could be a leave of absence. And then finally, when we talk about leavers, that would be, for example, individuals that are going to be finding greener pastures and moving on to another organization. We want to make sure we deprovision them. In other words, we can immediately remove access for all of the applications that that individual had access to simply by going into Okta and deprovisioning the user account. One of the biggest challenges major organizations have is user accounts that still have access to applications after the individual has left the organization. User lifecycle management helps to alleviate that problem. As far as account provisioning is concerned, we can import accounts into Okta from on-premise directories, whether it's LDAP or Active Directory. But then we can also import accounts into Okta from applications such as HR or CRM applications. We can then push those accounts into other applications that support user lifecycle management, such as Salesforce, Office 365, G Suite, and Box. Here, you're looking at the interface that allows us to import users from an application into Okta, such as from Salesforce into Okta. At that point, you can then take a look at what you have available and decide whether you want to go ahead and confirm those users so that they will then be active inside of the Okta Identity Cloud. In order to set up user lifecycle management, we'll click on the Provisioning tab now. And when we go to the Provisioning tab, we'll click on Configure API Integration, and then Enable API Integration. We'll go ahead and we'll enter the service account that is going to allow us to provision users into our Salesforce tenant, and then enter the password. Now, in the real world, we would also need a token, which would be generated inside of Salesforce. But since we have whitelisted the Salesforce domain, here we don't have to go and generate that token. I'll just test the API credentials and then save. At this point, I will simply go to the To App tab for provisioning, which indicates that we want to push user profiles from Okta to the application, in this case Salesforce. And I'll simply click Edit and then turn on the specific user lifecycle management operations that I'd like to be able to perform. I'm going to turn on Create Users, which will happen when we assign users to the application. I'll turn on Update User Attributes, So for attributes that have been mapped, when they're changed in Okta, we'll push that over to Salesforce. And I'll also turn on deactivate users, so we can deprovision users in Salesforce from Okta. And then I'll save. Having done that, we are now ready to test provisioning. To do that, we simply go to the Assignments tab and click on Assign Groups. I am going to use an Active Directory group here, call Sales, and when I select to assign that group, then I'll be prompted for a profile. I'm going to specify chatter-free user. And then having done that, I'll just scroll to the bottom and save. And after saving, we simply click Done. At this point, we can click on the People tab in order to see if our users have successfully been provisioned. And it appears that they have. Notice all the users that were in that Active Directory group should now be pushed over into our Salesforce tenant. And we can go and see that by simply navigating to Setup. And then we will look for Administration and Users. And here, sure enough, we can see several users that were pushed over. Joseph Baker, Okta ICE 760, Nate Abbott, Okta ICE 760, Frank Mullen, Okta ICE 760 are all active. So at this point, we should be able to go ahead and get into Okta with any of those users and launch the Salesforce application. We'll try it with Frank Mullen. And as we go ahead and enter his password, we log in for the very first time, and he's prompted to answer a password hint question and select a security image. With that, Frank is logged in, and sure enough, there he sees the Salesforce app. And in order to launch Salesforce, we'll just go ahead and click on the application icon. And sure enough, Frank is successfully logged into the Salesforce application. So there you have it. SSO and then User Lifecycle Management working together in order to set up access to an application from Okta. Well, now that you've had an opportunity to take a peek at what we have to offer, you can see that we've got a lot on tap for you in the Okta Essentials course. This course is designed for everyone that is intimately involved in the deployment and administration of Okta. We address a variety of different use cases for the various solutions that are available to you in the Okta Identity Cloud. And we have a nice balance of theory and concepts and hands-on activity in order to reinforce what you've learned, from implementing single sign-on, user lifecycle management, universal directory, as well as multi-factor authentication. I think you'll enjoy the course. And if you're ready to begin your journey to building your Okta expertise, go to the Okta training website and enroll. We look forward to having you.